All right, so today we're going to talk about the business opportunities presented by live streaming. And we have some awesome panelists here that I handpicked to talk about a couple different sides of this industry. We've got Ryan Brenneman, Allegheny Media. Ryan does some amazing things on Facebook Live, but he's also started a business all around live streaming. And he's really kind of become a little bit of a news agency in his local area, so I'll let him introduce himself in a moment. We've got Cliff Sobel from the StreamGeeks Network. Cliff brings about 20 years of business experience to the StreamGeeks Network, and then he consults with businesses and says, hey, here's a strategy for live streaming that I think is going to take off. He's got a couple clients that are making a lot of money with live streaming. We're going to talk about them. We've got Phil Kluba from Press IT in Toronto, right?
Press it.
Sorry, it's not Press IT. Press it. And Cliff has been working with a lot of musicians, artists, and doing some really disruptive marketing when it comes to Facebook Live. And then we've got Brian Samus from Amazon. This is for those bigger businesses out there that are reaching the point of maybe creating their own YouTube, creating their own apps, and reaching the point where, you know, they're starting to deploy their own live streaming systems and in the cloud. So let me ask each one of you guys to introduce yourselves, starting with Ryan.
Hi, my name is Ryan Brenneman. I own a company called Allegheny Media, and like Paul alluded to, we do a lot of different stuff. We are taking the approach of throwing a bunch of things at the wall and seeing what sticks. So a lot of local community-based live streaming. We've done some live drone stuff over top of fires, which culminated into a little bit of that news production, but we also then pull in highway cameras during winter live streaming. So a lot of different things is kind of what we're doing and seeing what has a go at it.
First thing is, Paul, thank you very much for saying that I have 20 years experience in media, because that puts me at age 40. So I really appreciate that. I am a live streaming addict. I have been in the world of digital imaging for 35 years. I finally figured out what I want to do when I grow up. I create original content, as well as I help companies grow their businesses through the power of live streaming.
I'm Phil Kluba. I own a company called Press It. I'm from Toronto, Canada. We specialize in creating innovative content solutions for our clients with a large emphasis on live streaming. So we do specialize with like live video advertising strategies to then help generate brand awareness and generate sales through either e-commerce or directly through their retail stores or whatever have you.
And my name is Brian Samus. I'm a solutions architect with Amazon Web Services. I'm actually new to the New York area. I'm actually originally from Toronto. I lived in Denver for the last 7 years, where I was actually covering media accounts on the U.S. West Coast. So I was primarily covering movie studios, as well as folks like Hulu, who are using the AWS platform to power their streaming infrastructure. And now that I'm in New York, I'm actually working with more East Coast accounts, folks like HBO and the big three-letter networks, to work with them on their streaming infrastructure.
All right, so we've got a lot of awesome topics to go into today. I'm going to ask our panelists about how to build a brand and leverage live streaming to do that, shortening the sales cycle, building customer relationships, what's going on with Amazon, what's going on with LinkedIn, mobile live streaming. Got a ton of stuff here, but I wanted to start, Brian, I want to start with some of the disruptive things that you're doing in the industry. Ryan's been getting thousands of shares for some of his content, flying drones over a building that's on fire, tapping into public webcams and creating a weather station. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? Because for your business, that must be incredible. And I want to hear a little bit about that first and what that's done for your business to get all those kind of viral shares and everything.
Yeah, thanks for saying disruptive. I mean, I don't know how disruptive other than lack of sleep that sometimes that gets, but really it was about just trying to bring content to people. So all of our community live streams were because it started with wanting to bring something to somebody who otherwise couldn't get there. And then it kind of culminated from that. The drone over top of the fire, I'll just add, we have an FAA license commercially to fly drones. I just happened to be kind of close by and ready to stream it, and it was huge. We had 600 some people watching it live at any one time, and that video culminated with like 90,000 views of it. The thing that happened at the end of it, though, was that our local news station asked to use my footage and wanted to give me credit. And I knew what I had was worth more than credit. They could have paid something. If they offered me $50, I would have sold it to them for $50, but they said they would give me credit. And to me, that just was, it was painful almost, knowing how many people had watched this. And so I said, you know what? Check me out a little bit later. I'm headed back up to the fire scene because they're several hours away. We're in a small community in Western Maryland. And so I knew I could get there with my camera, with my live view, and I knew I could talk about this in a meaningful and impactful way. So I interviewed the mayor, and I said, Mayor, what can we tell people? How can they help? And he said, you know what? We're taking a collection at City Hall for clothing and gift cards and all those items. And I said, I want to talk about that part, not just the devastation, but how can you recover from this? How can a community rally behind in a very small town with, you know, a whole row of homes that's on fire and many families displaced? And so I did. I just happened to mention, and that kind of brought into the thing where we could report the news a little bit differently than what it historically has been reported in our area. And then the traffic camera thing kind of just came about because I bought this really awesome vMix computer, and I come from the Black Magic, you know, where it works great, but I found all these IP addresses from our state highway administration. And I thought, wow, how great would that be since we don't have a news station locally? I could put our closing and delays up, loop a weather radar. So I ended up building a weather radar website, and I put all these components together. So the second we start to get bad weather, now I'm live streaming that out. Because of our internet bandwidth where we're from in Western Maryland, again, I'm using a LiveView Solo to basically guarantee our network stays up over winter storms. So we pull in 12 cameras from a highway administration. We loop those through. But the other thing is we're pulling in local cameras. So we have businesses that are deployed like Nest IQ cams on the outside intersections that we don't have coverage for. And we pull those feeds in, and then we just put sponsored by right over top. And so it's a constant live stream. We're using Facebook continuous live. So hopefully nobody watches it a day later and complains because it's not snowing anymore. But it's just been seeing what happens with it and watching the viewership. And not that I'm really necessarily making any money off of that just yet, but it has led to other businesses wanting to have website builders shooting commercials for them. So there's a lot of notoriety.
Cool, thank you. I just wanted to share that because it's so disruptive when it comes to like news, and I think that's going to be popping up quite a lot. I wanted to open this up to everybody. Maybe we'll start with you, Cliff, because it kind of does lend itself into brand building and getting yourself out in front of more customers, whether it's 100 viewers, 1,000 viewers. Tell us a little bit about how your customers are using live streaming to shorten the sales cycle and build a brand online.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The first thing is, I'm a contrarian. To me, it's not as important how many views you get as to who is watching the program. Because I'd much rather have 500 people watching my program who are interested, or my client programs who are interested in what their business or what they are doing, than have 5,000 viewers that I'm just throwing bovine scat to the wall. So that's the first thing. As far as building the brand, I think one of the biggest things is content. Content is king. I don't care what technology you're using. If you have good content, that's what people want. Because guess what? In 5 or 10 years from today, this may not be the StreamGeeks Summit. This might be the some other technology summit. And really what you want to do is make sure that you have good content. Consistency, imperative. I make sure that any client I work with, any original content we do, there is consistency. People like regular. You ever go into McDonald's and it's really not the best food in the world, but you know what you're getting? So that consistency is so important. People want to know, these are the topics this guy is going to talk about. This is the formula that this gal is using. There are so many aspects to the consistency. The day of the week, the time of the day. People want to have that regular consistency. That's also going to build credibility because they know they can depend upon you, especially when you're providing good content. There was one other added to that. Oh, yeah. And the connection. The connection is so important, that engagement, getting people connected and building deeper connections. I think it was IBM did a study with Brand Live, and they said that live streaming builds a deep, they did a survey, and that the live streaming builds a deeper connection by almost 80%. So that connection. And then be creative. Try to think, I hate to use this term, it's so overplayed, but try to think outside the box. Try to think about something somebody else is not doing, and what can I bring to the table? And you know what? Got to be a little brave to do that, but it's worth it. You know, like, what's the worst that happens? So it fails. So you go on and you do something else. You try something else. So those are the types of things we look at when we're trying to build brands. And by the way, that shortens the sales cycle. I don't know if you want me to get into that now or you want to wait on that, but what's that? Wait on that? Yeah. Okay. But that does shorten the sales cycle, and I'm sure we're going to get into that.
All right, Phil, what do you think?
I totally agree with everything you just said. So, yeah, content is king. So, like, for me, especially, like, when I try to create something for brands, it always has to start with the content. And then through, like, that, like, if we have something creative and then you subliminally start adding product in, or you don't, or you somehow you engage and you inspire these people to start thinking about a different brand. Like, for example, I did a music series where we had 3 separate bands playing, and like there was a Q&A portion, and then there was a cutaway to a green room, and we sponsored the whole green room with a portable guitar amp company called Jamstack, and in which when these people just subliminally started like searching up Jamstack afterwards, and it increased, the website got a 250% increase in traffic, and they began making some sales. But that wouldn't have happened if what they were watching already wasn't entertaining. So if you're making great content and building that audience, obviously you'll have results. And if you, like, obviously I'm a metric type of person, I like analytics. So then I look at who's watching it, and with Facebook, you're able to figure all that stuff out because we give all of our information to Facebook. Facebook knows what I like to eat, knows what kind of cats I like, knows that I love golden retrievers. And at that point, like, we know all of that, and it's like, hey, these people watching my show also like these things. Therefore, here's an opportunity for brand partnership or what have you. So I totally agree. Content is king.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about the live streaming ecosystem and the things that it's unlocked is that, you know, not too long ago, 10, 15 years ago, you know, the only things you could watch were pretty much what was on TV. And that kind of by definition had to appeal to the masses, right? You know, they had to produce stuff that a lot of people would like and a lot of people would want to watch, or else it didn't financially make sense. But now, kind of with this world we're in now, people who have more niche interests can really kind of do interesting things and create a following. And I, as a consumer now, also have access to all sorts of content that I wouldn't have had access to before, because maybe it's not commercially viable, you know, to air to 100 million people on TV. But to the 1,000 or 2,000 people that are really interested in that topic, it's really great content. I'll give you an example. I'm a pilot, and I watch every Tuesday evening. You know, there's a group of pilots who get together in a room and talk about boring aviation stuff on a Facebook Live. And that's the sort of thing that 99.99% of the population doesn't give a crap about. They wouldn't pay for it. They wouldn't watch it. But I support them on Patreon. I tune in religiously every week because it's something that matters to me and it's something that's important. So I think, by kind of finding a niche and finding an audience that can relate to your content, that's really kind of the trick to being successful in this world.
Wow, and I want to do a better job of answering questions today. So if there's anything in the chat, the people who are watching live, bring them up. We'll definitely answer them. So e-commerce has been taking off, but before we get to that and what Amazon's doing and what LinkedIn is doing online, I want to get to this idea of shortening the sales cycle through engaging with these live viewers. Let's just go down the line here. Obviously, engagement is key. I learned something I remember is answering every single YouTube comment. There was a time when I would get comments and be like, oh, that's great. But I forgot to reply and remember that that's a real person. And when you start to reply to these YouTube comments, you start to engage. Not only are you triggering the algorithm to go, there's a conversation here, people are excited about this content, but you're also communicating directly with these folks. So stories about engagement and this process of live streaming. One more thing I'll add, and I know I want to throw this to you guys, is that if you're live with 10 people and they watch for an hour, that's 10 hours of watch time, right? So if you're live with 100 people for an hour each, that's 100 hours. And we'll look at our analytics, and there'll be like 65 people watch for 1 hour each. How long would it take, for 65 hours, 65 meetings, right, to get to all those places and have face-to-face meetings? So it's a great technology to get in front of people. Tell me some stories about engaging with these people, making sales, shortening the sales cycle, and getting the word out there for you or your customers.
Well, for me, I would say this kind of goes back to I got started in church live streaming. And so I didn't know anything about PTZ Optic. I don't necessarily have a story of shortening our sales cycle, but this is a testament to what you were doing, because I caught your first live stream, and then it kind of progressed from there. I wanted to know who PTZ Optic was and what were they doing, and that was long before StreamGeek, in the very early days. And I said to myself, wait a second, I can do this. And it was your soft selling is ultimately what led to me purchasing 3 PTZ cameras. And so it works. It worked very well for me as a consumer getting into this industry. And so from that perspective, I think that it definitely shortened the sales cycle, because I was coming from a very physical switcher world. You were talking about vMix. I wanted to do more, and I didn't know how to do more. So it was your part of it that led me actually into this industry as a whole, as I'm sitting up here today. So, that was just 2.5 years ago. And so I would say that definitely shortened that sales cycle. So,
well, thank you. That I do want to get into some of the nuances, if we can, about the subtleties of selling, because it's interesting. It's more of an entertainment, edutainment, soft, subliminal type of thing. Maybe we can get into that. And Cliff, I know you have some experience there.
Yeah. So to me, the whole thing is content marketing, providing valuable information for free, just giving it away. And what that does is it builds credibility. When people know that you're giving them something of value, they feel like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. He's like giving me this information that I can use to grow my business. So that's the first thing. So that now builds credibility, which builds trust. That goes back to the old days. I used to own a company that did sales training for global corporations. And the sales cycle works similarly. And in the online version, you're still building relationships. All about relationships. When you build that relationship online, when you get that viewer engaged, have them become a participant, when you answer them, when you look at that camera and go, hi, Paul, that's a great question. Here's the answer. They feel so important. And it draws them in. It builds loyalty, builds credibility. Now what happens is, if someone has been watching my program and they're interested in what I do and they want to speak with me, when I go into their office, they already know me. They know who I am. They say, that's the guy that gives me all that free content. He's pretty cool. Now I've been risen to the level of consultant. And I've now shortened the sales cycle because they feel like they know me already. I've been given credibility because I gave them free content, and now I can begin selling a product or service immediately. I don't have to start the whole process of, hey, nice picture of your family fishing, George. Don't have to do that. You can cut right to the chase. That shortens the sales cycle. And it's all part of it. It starts with engagement.
Yeah, I totally, once again, I agree. But just on the topic of trust and engagement, and it's the best form of communication right now is a face-to-face type of communication. We're all over, advertising is very oversaturated. We get an ad on our Instagram and our Facebook, on our LinkedIn, they're always happening. So if you're able to talk to your customers directly and talk to them face to face, they're already building that source of trust in you, like you were just saying. So I totally agree with the statement that through live video, you're able to cut the bullshit and just get straight to the bottom of it and just be real with your consumers.
Sure. So I approach this kind of from a slightly different angle from the rest of the folks on the panel, because my interactions are primarily kind of business to business. I'm, coming from a relatively large business, and I'm talking for the most part to relatively large businesses who have a large amount of live content that they don't know what to do with. And one of the things that really, really excites me is the fact that people can now actually get value from all of these cameras that they have laying around that previously may not have been actually bringing money in. They can actually monetize that content and actually gain value. I'll give you an example. I was working with a news broadcast, and they had hundreds of cameras around the city that they're just kind of there for bump shots. So in between from cutting from one anchor to another, they would switch to a live feed of the Empire State Building, or to a traffic feed of a particular street or a highway or something like that. But that's all they were using those cameras for. They weren't actually. I mean, they were capturing video 24/7, but they were only using them kind of just for a second here, a second there, kind of just to add interest and flair. And when we were talking to this customer, they kind of said, hey, we've got all these feeds. There must be a better way that we can use them, and when we kind of said, well, why don't you stream them? Why don't you take, this stream of the Empire State Building, this stream of, of this traffic on the bridge, and just make it available 24/7 for anyone who wants to look at it. The barriers to entry of doing that are relatively low. I mean, granted, there's not many people who are going to pay to watch, cars driving across a bridge, but it's value-added content for those users who maybe, want to wake up in the morning and say, hey, I want to look at what my commute's going to look like before I actually get the car. So I get really excited because this world of live streaming that we live in has opened up all these opportunities for us to actually extract value from all of these cameras and all of this content that's out there that wasn't being used to its full.
Wow. There is one little thing I want to add to the conversation. Probably one of the biggest hacks that our business has found is creating kind of like an inclusive community through all of this live streaming and engagement. And one way to do that is Facebook groups. And it literally has become like our number one lead generation, is to just say, hey, everybody, everybody here, join our StreamGeeks Facebook group. In order to do that, we ask for your email. It's actually optional, but a lot of people do want to opt into our communication because there is an inclusive group, and those end up becoming leads for our team and for your interest in the product that we sell. So creating this inclusive community is beneficial in so many ways. That's another that really type of value, and there's a lot of ways to do this. But you want to one thing that any small, medium, large business can do is provide something of value that the viewer then takes the next step and gets it downloadable, or joins a group, or gets into your sales funnel and your marketing system, in a natural, obviously value-added way. So I want to ask you guys a little bit about e-commerce, and Amazon actually has live streaming. I know, Brian, we'll talk a little bit about the AWS side, but e-commerce and live streaming is going to become a humongous thing. Now we talked about, maybe you guys can take this two ways. There's the subtle way of product placement, brand building, right? And then there's the, hey, I'm on Amazon right now and I've got a promotion and I'm live streaming to the world and you can buy it right here. Can we talk about a little bit about kind of like e-commerce and Shopify and Facebook Live? Facebook has shops and things like that, and actually making money in that way?
Yeah, so I'll just say real quick, the trust thing is really important, and that goes into shortening that sales cycle when you're engaging people authentically online, and as Cliff had said, when you are speaking to them directly, they trust that what you're saying is gold. And so when you're making that native talk about whatever, they're going to purchase from it. The Urbanist said it too. It's these native ads. It's why on podcasting they are live reading these ads, because if I trust that podcaster and I subscribe to them, if they're talking about a product, typically it's their name that goes behind that product too. They're not going to recommend something because they understand that their brand is themselves. And if they're going to recommend something that isn't authentic, then it would just shoot themselves in the foot. From the e-commerce side, I think that there's a huge opportunity on our level, having a small production studio, which may be a lot of the viewership watching right now, some of you in the room. We have an opportunity that we can use our studio to bring in some of these independent marketers and using Facebook to sell their product, to build their brand, shorten their sales cycle. And I think that's really critical. I think there was, they got bought out by Facebook, but Vidpresso was this really neat titling product. But the thing that it had the capability of doing is, if you were a Mary Kay consultant and you were selling a red lipstick, all they had to do, type in a comment, was red lipstick 01. A chatbot would engage with them on Facebook Messenger, providing them a link to make that purchase. That's shortening the sales cycle drastically. You no longer have to go into homes or into businesses and host parties and get people to cook 5 different items and everyone brings chips in the same thing. Now you're actively engaging with them. You have a model putting something on. That's the power of social media. And I think that natively we'll see those things start to crop up where independent marketers can start.
Paul, could I provide an application? Okay. So here's one thing I know. By the way, PD, get ready to spin your camera around. What I know is, if I don't know something, I work with people who are much better and smarter than me at what they do. I have a knack for doing that. I found a company who is in the lacrosse training and recruitment business. They have a niche. They've been in the business for 15 years. They have a stellar reputation. And I said, you know what? I need to get them live streaming, because if I can do that, I can help them build their business. And not only have they built that business, but they are now building a media empire that will someday, and not in the distant future, will be larger than their original business, and that includes e-commerce. So, Paul, if you could take that microphone, throw it to 3 jocks back, maybe you guys can describe what's going on with FLG Lacrosse and your BYG. Right, Corey.
What's up, guys? So the e-commerce thing is it's pretty new to us. It's interesting. Like Cliff said, we started as a company that was focused around a bunch of coaches getting kids together, coaching them up, helping them through the recruiting process, getting them into college, running large-scale and small recruiting events, as well as just youth stuff in the sport of lacrosse. And now, very similar to some of the stories that we've heard here today, like we've had this explosion of media happen where people are kind of turning to us as the experts, and it's because of this live stream show we started, which is pretty cool. The question now is, we're building up an audience, we have a following. How do we kind of monetize it? But I think when I think about monetizing this media side of things, it's really through relationship. And, we're now starting to sell products. We have product placement. We have people that are actually paying to be on our platforms. But I think the relationships that you build through the power of live streaming goes so much farther than the things that I think are as simple as like a click, a purchase, and a sale that might come back to you or something that.
But now you're also working with e-commerce using Shopify. Some of your sponsors.
Yeah, exactly.
You are becoming partners.
Yeah, we're kind of becoming like a retail, in terms like a virtual retail stop for some of the products that are now on our platforms, because we're selling them for them, which is pretty cool. We just landed our first partner and just got our first sale on the drive over here, which is pretty cool. And we got a little notification on Shopify. It's literally our first time using it. We didn't even know you had to fulfill the order. So our marketing guy was like, "Hey, how do you fulfill this?" We're like, "What do you mean? They bought the product. We're good, right?" He's like, "No, you need to let the guy know who's making the product to ship it out." So it's all very new to us. So it's pretty funny. But I think the biggest things, going back to the relationships, the people who have watched our shows, who have connected with us, who have commented, the people that we've replied to, the people we've met just by walking around and them coming up to us, have led to other things down the road that created, bigger, better, stronger business opportunities I think is the most powerful thing in this. But everything else is kind of coming too as well.
And because they have so much credibility in the lacrosse world. I mean, now they go to lacrosse games and kids come up to them and just stare at them like this. And they'll go like, yeah, I watch your show. And they have so much credibility, they have no choice but to be successful in e-commerce because they've built a brand with a great reputation.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy our 1 o'clock panel on monetization because you'll get some really interesting thoughts. People I think might be a little further down the road who've had the show for 5-10 years who are monetizing their shows in different ways. That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, e-commerce is a very exciting thing to me personally. I've been spending a lot of time researching this stuff. So some of my first live streams were at Shopify, like I used to do the Shopify Meetup Toronto live streams, and I was around in that whole environment, and I would see what they're doing consistently. And to me, it's always been, obviously, one, you got to build trust. In a market where everyone has a Shopify store, like your mom, your uncle, and their dog literally have a Shopify store, and they're just like sourcing things from Alibaba, and there's so many people selling the same thing under a different brand, you really need to build trust and something that's unique. So step one is trust. And then step two, I think, is like getting people to buy it as quick as possible. So as little clicks as possible. So obviously we're not going to a retail store no more because no one does that. So there's a couple companies that I've been noticing, like I know that Amazon Live, for example, the products are just like right there and you can click them. But then there's the topic of, you're directly trying to sell to this person and people don't like being directly sold to. So that's another topic that I've always like tried to figure out what is the best way to do this. And I think it's different per brand. So some brands that I work with, they're not even concerned about sales and they're just concerned about shifting perception. So instead of, like, for example, Mercedes is a brand, not that I work with, but they started sponsoring tons of live concert events. Not because they want to sell cars, but they're hoping that maybe this demographic of a 16-year-old that likes this artist, when they're ready to buy a car, and this nostalgic little live performance that happened and made them feel good at some point, will then push them to buy this car when they're ready to buy it, because they're familiar with Mercedes. So e-commerce could work directly as a sale. When you're talking about like a big purchase like a car, you got to put down a down payment. Maybe they're just trying to prepare this person into buying it psychologically. So if someone is into your brand and trusts you, and then yours, like for example, let's say I have my own live stream show and people are following me, and then all of a sudden I start driving a Mercedes, and then all of my audience members then associate that and then have this nostalgic appreciation of that brand. So that's getting like really psychological and looking down the path, and I don't know what I'm ranting about anymore. But back to the topic of just, I think, like trust. I researched it a lot. It's different for every brand. Standing out in an oversaturated market where everyone's selling the same product under a different name, and trust, I think, is the most important. And then shortening that time of a person making that purchase.
And to kind of echo what you're saying about trust, I think one of the best ways to build trust is customer service. At the end of the day, you can buy the same, like you said, you can buy the same widget, from 12 different e-commerce storefronts and pay, maybe the same price on all of them. But the one you're going to go back to is the one where, they ship it to you quickly. They're responsive when you ask questions. If there's a problem, they resolve it really quickly. And that's something that, has been a big contributor to the success that Amazon's had in that space. Both as a customer and an employee, I can tell you that, that's something that Amazon is very good at is providing a good experience to customers in terms of reacting quickly, accepting returns, dealing with problems and fixing those problems as quickly as possible. The other thing, kind of on the topic of e-commerce and live streaming, that gets me excited as kind of a techno geek, which is a bit kind of less on the business side, more on the tech side, is the explosion of data that we have now. Not too long ago, in the olden days, maybe you'd buy a TV commercial, and then you'd have to wait for Toys R Us to send you data back 6 months later to find out whether that commercial actually had an impact on your sales or not. But nowadays, with live streaming, we have all of this data and analytics right at our fingertips. We know exactly the moment that a product placement or that an advertisement happened, and then from sources like Amazon and other e-commerce platforms, Shopify, we can get information right away on how did that actually impact our sales, and how what impact did that have. So it really shortens that feedback loop to allow us to kind of experiment and try things and find out what works and what doesn't work. And I'm also really excited about future technologies and where this is going to take us for live streaming. Examples are don't get freaked out. This isn't stuff that we're doing today. This is just kind of stuff that's percolating in my brain. Is things like using things like computer vision technology and machine transcription technology to help recognize that hey, you're a YouTuber, you're on Facebook Live right now, and you're driving a Mercedes, and I can detect that Mercedes logo in that stream in real time, and then maybe give you a pop-up or give you some sort of click-through option to actually say hey, do you like such and such's car? Click here for more details on the 2019 Mercedes C-Class. Those are the sorts of things that we're going to be able to do with these technologies that will really, I think, help to kind of amplify and create more opportunities for monetization in live streams, even when there's potentially no direct kind of sponsorship relationship.
So I want to give, we got our New Yorkers in the house.
Sorry.
If you're a business, right, well, I want to talk about the different types of businesses and where should they be, right? What should you be focusing on? Tell us what type of businesses you guys are in, by the way, so we can kind of directly ask your questions. But one in particular I want to highlight is called LinkedIn. Okay, now I understand it's in beta. Not everyone has had access to it yet. I'm really grateful to have access to it. And it really starts to change the game. And I want to talk about what's working on which platform. Really quickly, I can tell you that on LinkedIn, we're having some really incredible success. And I'm hoping that 2020, everyone's going to have access to this. But imagine being able to live stream and every single connection you have on LinkedIn is notified, right? Or on your business page, every single person who follows your business on LinkedIn is now notified. And so there's other platform-specific ideas is what I'm looking for from the panel. But from my experience on LinkedIn, I have 5,000 connections on LinkedIn. Some people have a lot more, some people have less. But you're live streaming and connecting with all of these people that you already have business relationships with. And I've noticed that through something like LinkedIn, you can immediately say, oh, look, the second-degree connection of mine. This is how I'm connected to this person. And your social network starts to grow. And maybe we're just lucky because we have beta access and we're getting tons of views on LinkedIn. But I think I want to talk a little bit about kind of the spreading of your social media network and starting today rather than a year from now. And that was one of the big things I've always told our customers is you don't want to miss out on a full year of live streaming because that's sort of what it takes sometimes. It's a full year. And after that, your friend has shared it with his friend and your business associate has shared it with this group. And that full year could double your business. I mean, it happened to our business when Facebook Live came out. 1 year later, our business was twice the size. Literally twice the size. I'm not kidding. So tell me about the spread of your social media network, the value of a share, the viral type of engagement that you're seeing, and where should businesses be focusing?
Well, I might go against the grain here. I think that you can spread out too much. I think that there was a presentation that I watched at NAB. Claudia was Stream. And I think that we do have to be just a little bit cautious about what networks we want to hit on. It isn't about just taking this content and splashing it out there, because if it's not authentic, if you're not engaging with them, why would you be there? We used to say, for small businesses, yeah, you know what, as a small business, you should have a Pinterest, you should have an Instagram, you should have a Facebook, but they weren't doing any one of them really well. Choose your platform that you can honestly engage people with. I think it's less about the width and more about the depth. If we can get deep with people on the platforms that are really important to you, then I think that's where you should be. But I also think, just last night, as I was reading a bunch of stuff, Facebook continuously is in the news about a lot of the stuff that is happening. It's something that, as a streamer, you want to watch for. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, though, either, because very quickly there could be a platform that just tracks off. That history time thing that was spinning around, Google crept up, and I noticed that Yahoo then caught back up to them again. Something happened, and they faded back out. Sure, always stay abreast of a new network or platform that's coming up, but I don't think that you want to be just everywhere for the sake of being everywhere.
Ryan, I could not agree with you more.
It's not against the grain then. If Cliff says it, it's true.
So I'm a pain in the neck New Yorker. Reason being is that you've got to target your audience. I am frothing at the mouth for LinkedIn to allow me to go live because I am a business-to-business company. That's where I belong. I'm relegated to other platforms right now. I'm on YouTube and Facebook, but I really don't think Facebook is the place for me to be. I think LinkedIn is where I'm going to find the most people. I think that's where the people are going to be most interested in what I'm doing in the content that I am providing. So currently what I do is I will take we have about 5 programs on our network right now. And on my specific program, I have one of my own that I host called Anatomy of an Entrepreneur. That's all about entrepreneurialism. I curate the hour-long show I do. I cut it up into about 12 to 15 clips of salient points that I think that my LinkedIn audience will like. I get so many views on those 1-minute clips. And in my show, I make sure to hit topics that I know that I can cut down to a 1-minute clip. But that is so important to curate those clips, and I put them on LinkedIn. And I just can't wait for the day that they say to me, okay, Cliff, we're ready for you now. You can come on LinkedIn, because for me, I see it as a gold mine. Don't see Facebook. YouTube, well, I embed YouTube on my website, but I don't see that for me for the big play. I see a platform that's devoted to business to business for someone like me.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely over YouTube, but I think the whole LinkedIn thing could be exciting. For my clients and all, I do agree with the statement that you do need to have a specific thing you're trying to get across. But for my personal brand, I try to be a little bit unpredictable. So I do have a side of me that is more intellectual, which I think would work great on LinkedIn. But I'm actually really excited about TikTok. So right now, I have a few friends that are just going viral on it, because examples for now, like Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, you got to pay to be viewed. You got to they're monetizing on that platform. But considering new things like LinkedIn or TikTok, if it's new, they want you to use the platform. They want you to have success, because your success stories are going to mean that they can then charge more for ad spend in the future. So new platforms like TikTok and LinkedIn are going to have, I feel like it's going to be easier to go viral on as soon as it comes out, because it's not going to have that limitation of if you go on Facebook now, if you want anyone to see your thing, you have to buy ads, because it's no longer organic. So that's what excites me about LinkedIn. Does anyone know when that's going to be happening, or is that already happening? Or
is LinkedIn in a room? Who's the rep for LinkedIn of where we can get set up for LinkedIn? Cliff.
I've been trying, and I've had no success. Even one of my clients is going to be on LinkedIn, and I'm going to add paid, but I can't get on. I don't know if anybody's here. Paul, you actually might.
It's currently in beta, but I do have access to it, and I have to say it's incredible. But what they're doing is so different than anything we've seen. It's taking them some time to work out the kinks, and I've found a few of the kinks and reported them. But the ability, that we're thinking about here and pondering, and I've seen it happen, is you've got 25 people watching, and you hover over, and you go, oh, that's a second-degree connection. Connect. And that's a third-degree connection. Connect. And I've actually talked to LinkedIn a little bit about the way that their engagement system works. And if, immediately everyone you're connected to is notified. The notifications are incredible. But as soon as a second degree connection starts to engage, now that person's connections are engaged and notified. And then it can happen at a third degree. And essentially, we're all 5 degrees, connected to Kevin Bacon, right? So, I mean, it has the I understand what you're saying there, and I've used it. I think we got a really large number of live streams the very first time we went.
Yeah, you do.
And it was really, really awesome. LinkedIn is very expensive to advertise on. Phil's commenting on Facebook. They have the details on his golden retriever and how much, how often he feeds him. And Facebook's been amazing that way. LinkedIn's platform has an advertising platform built in as well. So as soon as we all get access to it, I see that as being the big hot one for B2B. Now on the B2C side, business to consumer side, Amazon's obviously doing amazing things. And I wanted to ask you, Brian, a little bit about some of your customers, because you work with some of the really big companies, right? And some of these companies are so large that they're building their own YouTubes. They're getting off of LinkedIn and saying, I want to control the entire experience because there are some limitations with YouTube and Facebook. And sometimes they want to control the entire thing. At what point does a business go, LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube can get me a lot of views and maybe I'll use that. But at what point does a business go, I want to start my own channel completely and kind of say, I've got the demand and I'm going to control this thing 100%?
Sure. I think there's kind of 2 main factors in businesses making that decision. And you hit on one of them already. You said control. Control is a big one. And the other one is money. So I'll kind of break down each of those a little bit. So in terms of control, when you're advertising or when you're going live on YouTube or Facebook or Periscope, Twitter or whatever platform you're using, you as the content creator are giving up a lot of control over what happens to that content, who ultimately owns it, who has the rights to do stuff with it. Not only that, but even things like how it's monetized. You may have some sort of revenue sharing agreement with those platforms, but at the end of the day, they have kind of control over how advertising is put into it and things like that. So for people who care a lot about kind of what the experience is and maybe they have content that they want to monetize in a very specific way, it makes sense in some of those cases for them to kind of say, okay, Facebook, YouTube, great, but we kind of want to own the whole thing. And some great examples of that are, for example, HQ Trivia is a great one. HQ Trivia is an app that has a kind of a live video component to it. But I feel like it would be a lot less compelling if you were in this app, playing their trivia game and there was like a little Twitch logo in the bottom. Because that's not a kind of consistent experience that's on their branding and all that sort of thing. They want to have full control over the full ecosystem. The other one is a bit more technical, which is sometimes, especially if you're building an app that has a video experience, you may have specific technical characteristics you want video to have in terms of things like latency or interactivity or those sorts of things that you don't have full control over when you're using one of those other platforms. The other thing that I think kind of give up a lot of control over too is who your audience. When you're on YouTube or one of those platforms, basically anyone on the platform can watch content for the most part. I mean, there's obviously to restrict it, but a lot of companies, for example, who want to do corporate streaming of maybe their internal events, training, their town halls, those sorts of things, they don't want to put those up on YouTube for a couple of reasons. One, because maybe they're talking about confidential things in those town halls, and they want to control who can watch them. The other one is maybe YouTube's a competitor, and they don't want their competitor to have access in one way, shape, or form to their internal secrets. The other factor that I mentioned was cost, right? And there's a couple of kind of things to unpack cost. First one is that when you're using Facebook, YouTube, or any of those platforms, they kind of abstract the cost away from you of actually delivering those streams to hundreds or thousands, millions of viewers. They kind of absorb those. They take care of how to monetize it. All you have to do is worry about creating content, sending it up. And that's great for a lot of people. But if you're going to build your own platform, you're basically responsible for those costs. They're no longer being borne by Facebook on your behalf. So you need to have a plan for, how am I monetizing this? How am I going to actually pay for that distribution cost because I'm no longer using someone else monetizing it for me. And the other thing, on the subject of monetization in that vein is that how you monetize the content will also depend a lot on whether it makes sense for a company to build their own platform. If you're making money on kind of being famous, if you're making money on the number of views and follows that you have, then those social platforms are still, I think, the best way to go. If you're making money on trying to actually sell the content, on selling subscriptions or you want to sell advertisement, then going through a middleman is probably not the best way to do it, and you may want to have that relationship directly. Finally, the very, very last thing I'm going to touch on is things like terms of service. When you're using YouTube and Facebook, you're subject to what they deem to be appropriate for their platform. And if you're, a producer that produces content that is potentially, politically controversial, or maybe there's adult-related content or something stuff that you're creating, then those are generally not the best platforms, and that might be another time when you may want to look at controlling your own.
Wow. All right, so we've only got about 6 minutes left. We've got to start the esports tournament. Can I get the catchbox tab?
Yeah.
We're going to throw it to this gentleman right over here, and he's got a question for us. We've got an esports tournament starting exactly at 11, along with an esports panel we want to stick on schedule for. So please, ask us your question.
Purely in a selfish effort, you want to become the next Cliff. I know you have your studio and you have your network. I mean, how, kind of a meta question, like how viable is that business, your studio and your network in and of itself, or is it kind of a means to an end to kind of get more, to drive businesses and stuff like is that a reasonable profit center for you, or is it just kind of use that to get, get business?
Right. I look at it two ways. I look at it as the low-hanging fruit is consulting with companies, and then I look at the long term, and the long term is developing original content and building up the original content. That's really where I want to go. But you know what? Right now I've got to pay some bills, and I love live streaming, and it makes me very happy to watch people light up when they get it and they want to do it. But really, for me, is the original content. And as long as I can keep affording to do this, I'm going to keep going that direction. That's really what I want to do. I'm not a technology guy. I'm a creative who needs to use technology to create creative programming. That's what I love to do. So,
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, Jeremy Hopwood from MediaPlace, creative director at MediaPlace, MediaPlace.us. Question just to pick up on what the gentleman was saying. We're a creative services company, mostly for B2B communication, some B2C. In everything that's being talked about, you're talking about long-term, short-term play. How, as a creative services company, would all four of you advise us on how to position ourselves to be relevant to large or mid-sized businesses in terms of production and content and setting up for live streaming and creating live streaming channels and series and things like that? We're a traditional media company in delivering pre-produced content for businesses, medium and large-sized businesses, but we want to be relevant in this space.
I mean, I guess I would say I don't know your audience. That would be it's really a difficult question in trying to determine but do they want to be relevant in their space? I mean, I think that's the thing that I would want to ask. How serious are they about building their brand? Cliff is working with lacrosse, right? Yeah, okay. We talked about a lot of sports yesterday, so esports being the biggest. But how relevant do they want to be engaged that in order to know, is there going to be value in it? The question about profitability of studios, my studio isn't profitable. I have 900 square feet. I host a free show called Hope Rising about, it started about the drug epidemic in our community and about how people could get out of addiction to heroin and what programs are available. So I paid for my studio for a year and there was never a penny raised on it. But at the end of the day, people were being helped by that program. And so I live in a very impoverished community, 18,000 people. I spend $450 a month for 900 square feet, and it includes utilities. for me, it was way better than driving to a lady's house in her living room, setting up a live stream every single week. It was kind of half selfish, half, the other thing. But now I have a studio space that I can engage and reach with people. So how passionate are they about reaching others? Can you make a business model out of that? But then also sometimes it isn't about money. The greatest things I've ever done have been touched people's lives, and it resolves nothing about any monetary value.
So if I were to answer your question, I would go down two roads. The first one is go on the journey of learning about live streaming. All aspects, not just technology. What makes a good, why do you live? Learn the technology, take classes, watch what other people are, speak to those in the field, and go on the journey and learning it and being able to implement it yourself. The other route that I might think about is partnering with a company that does understand all that and that can help you with your client in defining the best ways to use live streaming for them. It's not for everyone. But, you guys all know that Cisco said that 82% of all internet traffic by 2020 will be video. Facebook says 3 times people will watch a live video 3 times longer than they'll watch a pre-recorded video. So, read the tea leaves. That's where it's going. So I would do that. And also remember, one more thing, and I'll stop chatting, is education. We're so early on in the process now, don't expect a sale so quick. Educate people first. Help them understand why it's so important. Hopefully a light will go on over time and get it. You'll also build your own.
That's it, guys. It's time for our esports tournament. Thank you so much, everybody.